Hello everybody and welcome to the another lecture. Since last lecture we were discussing the input method, how we can take user input from our website. Okay, and we discussed the two very important method. One method was about creating drop down by using select tags and option tags in it, and then we discussed the text area tag to take the user input so that user can type particularly anything inside that field. Okay, so now from this video we will move towards another user input tag, which is input tag itself. Okay, and it has a very powerful attribute which is type attribute. So if you create the input tag, you will get a type attribute, and inside that attribute you can pass the content type, whatever type of input you want to take from the user, like you can pass date, time, and many things. So if you create this with the type text, which is default type attribute value for the input tag, okay, so it will create a box on your website page. Okay, and inside that particular box you can write anything. You can type alphabet, number, special character, or anything else, whatever you want. Okay, now based on the requirement, there is a few few different categories of input tags available. Like if I don't want to take anything else than number, then we can use the input tag with the number attribute. Okay, so what it will do in this kind of input tag, a user can only create particularly user can only write a number, and if he tries to write anything apart from this, he will not be allowed to type anything. He cannot type alphabet, he cannot type actually a special character or anything. He will have the functionality, he will only have the functionality to type number in it. Okay, and he will have two buttons to increase this number and to decrease this number one by one. So he can use the keyboard, or he can use this buttons to create or decrease or increase numbers. Okay, next, after this actually number and this text, we have another input tag which is date. So what it will do, it will create a calendar on our screen. So if you want to capture the date, like date of birth or admission date or anything else from the user which involves dates, so you don't have to write a dummy input tag for this. There's a input type date attribute, and it will create particularly calendar on the user end, and he can choose any date, any number from that particular calendar. You can even control this, how your calendar will look like what will be the minimum date and what will be the maximum date, but randomly it will create the date from for all the year availables. Okay, so moving towards the next input tag, which is actually a time tag, time attribute, input tag time, type time, and what it will do, it will create a 12-hour time format, like with the AM and PM option value. So a user can choose particularly any time for the 12-hour format. Okay, next, after the time, we actually have range. Okay, so if you want to create a slider, like you may have noticed this kind of feature on any website, or maybe you have used this kind of slider for decreasing or increasing value. This is the input tag, this is type range, and this particular value, this particular type of the input tag can create a slider on your browser, on the screen of your website, and user can choose a particular specific value from by decreasing or increasing, or by setting a particular pointer value. Okay, so you can also pass the minimum and maximum range, from which range to which range you want to allow the users to choose the value from. And actually you can capture this value, whatever value is set by the user, you can capture this by using JavaScript method. Okay, after this we have color. So we have another input tag which is named color, and this kind of input tag is actually used to create a color palette on the screen. So if you want to take the what is the best color for the user, Okay, what is the favorite color of a particular user, or like any kind of scenario regarding color, you can create the color palette by passing the color range, sorry, by passing the type color value in the input tag, and it will create a RGB palette for this particular color input section, and user can choose any color, and again you can capture this particular chosen color by the JavaScript method. Okay, then we have next input tag, which is type email. Okay, so a user can particularly choose input tag. You can provide a particular input tag in which a user should have to write a valid URL. So that means if you do not mention @ symbol and then .com or .in or anything which refer to a valid URL, sorry, valid email structure, this field is gonna raise an exception that a user cannot submit this particular form because the email value is not valid. Okay, but you will get this feature only if you are using this email input tag inside a particular form. So this validation will not validate itself when you will use this inside a particular form, and when a particular user click on the submit button, only then this email or this any input validation is gonna run by that particular form validation method. Okay, it will be used automatically, but you have to use it inside a particular form, and we will see that how we can create a form and how we can use this validation method by default automatically. Okay, so after this email we have actually another input type, which is file. So if you want to take any particular file like video file or audio file from the user side, or image file for his or her profile icon, so you can pass the input type file attribute. Okay, and you can pass input tag. You can use input tag with the file attribute, and what it will do, it will create a particular choose file button on the screen, and by clicking that particular button a user can choose any content or any file which he or she needs to upload on your particular website. Okay, after this we have input type submit, which will create a particular submit button on the screen. So if you are using a form and you want to submit that particular form, you can use input type submit, and this particular submit button will submit a particular form, but it will only work if you are using it inside a form section. It will have no feature if you are not using it. You can connect the JavaScript method, but if you are not using it inside the form, apart from that you have no method, or you have no way to use this button elsewhere. Okay, so either you will use it inside a form, or you will use it inside a particular with the particular JavaScript content. Okay, so apart from this, you can also use the button tag to create a particular button, but you also have to pass the type attribute, and you have to write the submit to submit a particular form section. So all these methods and all these contents we will discuss inside the form method when we will discussing the form. For now, this input type submit and button is used to create a particular button tag. You can notice that. Okay, after this we have input type password. So if you want to create a feature, like if a particular user is typing anything inside the input field, or maybe maybe that is the confidential data, and you don't want to just show it on the UI side directly, so you can use a password field for that, and mostly it is used for passwords. And what it will do, if a user type anything inside this particular field, he is not gonna see anything. Okay, it will hide the content, and it will show the dot symbol only instead of just showing the content. Okay, so it was all about the password field. After this we have input tag with the month. So notice when you were using the date, input type date, it was creating a functionality to choose year, month and date capabilities, but if you use the input type month, it will give the functionality to choose the date, to choose the month and year only. It will not have the functionality to choose date. Okay, so user cannot choose date from here, he can only choose month and particular valid year from this input tag. Okay, second last, we have the input type checkbox, and by using this a particular user can create a checkbox like a declaration box or anything, so that a user should have to tick it before submitting the form, or any kind of scenario like this, or maybe it was an online quiz section and then he have to click on this particular tick button to choose a particular option. Okay, regarding that, actually you can also create a type radio, okay, for the same functionality. So I can use type radio in the input field, and it will create a circular check button, so a user can also click on this and check it, but it is circular. And now if you once checked it, you have no feature to uncheck it without using JavaScript. So if you are using checkbox, you can check it and uncheck it, but if you are using the radio, you can check it, but you have to use JavaScript if you want to uncheck this particular section. Okay, so it was all about the input tag, and it was all about their types. Okay, now you can use all these input tags to create a form, and by using that particular form you can take the user input, capture the user input and send it to your database system. Okay, now if you want to create a particular form inside the HTML, you have a form tag, so you have to create a form tag for that. And this particular form tag has a very important attribute, which is action, and also one more which is method. Okay, so you can pass get method, post method, different type of methods are available there. Well, why you need this particular form tag, and if you are going to use only your pre-discussed input tag, why you can't just directly use those input tag as we used it previously, like here? Why can't we write like this directly? Well, actually if you want to capture a particular data from the user, then that means you want to send that particular data to somewhere at a particular location or at a particular server. Okay, so if you are using the form tag, only then you have functionalities to send the captured data to a particular server by a URL. And if you are using this form tag, you can pass that particular URL inside the action, and once you will submit this form, all the input method will be validated, and after the complete validation, your data or users captured data will be submitted to the server whose URL is provided is in the action attribute. Okay, so let's say I want to capture the username and password for the user, so I can create an input tag, okay, with the type text for the username, and another input tag with the type password for the password, because it is confidential. Okay, and notice we discussed that we have a particular button concept. So if I want to submit a particular form, I have to pass either input type submit or button type submit tag to create a particular button. Okay, so we will use let's say input type submit to create a submit button. Okay, now if we notice at our page, so we can notice here that here is 2 field is created and 1 button is created, and a particular user can write their username and can write a particular password inside it and hit the submit button. Okay, but where we want to redirect this data and to validate if this is the valid username and this is the valid password or not. Okay, so if I want to send this username and password data to the Google server, so I will write here the complete URL of Google. Okay, so this is how you can send the data to you can capture the data from your UI side, from your front end side. Okay, and how you can submit this data to a backend server. Okay, so this URL will be the complete view URL where your backend validation view is running, and if you pass it correctly, this data will be redirected to that particular URL. Okay, well, what is the role of this form method attribute actually? Well, if you notice this particular form, if I hit submit button, actually there is a question mark. My form data has been wiped out and there is a question mark after the URL appended. Okay, what it means that it was trying to capture the data, but it is not able to capture because you cannot see anything after the actually question mark symbol. Why this is the case? Actually, if you want to submit the data of input tag, okay, so you have to pass a name attribute to all the input tag whose data you want to submit with this method. Okay, so if I am passing the name inside the first input tag, and you can write any name here, like for the convention, if I am capturing the username here, I can pass username. I can name this field as the username, and then if I am capturing the password here, then I can name it as password or pass anything, whatever you want. Remember, you will be able to capture this data with the same name inside the backend server. Okay, so till the time when I didn't use this name attribute, it was not submitting any data. It was just appending the question mark, and it was empty after that question mark. Now if I write anything, and if I write anything inside the password and hit the submit button, okay, let me reload the page. I didn't reloaded it. So okay, if I write anything inside here, and if I write inside the password and hit the submit button, well, you will notice that the page is reloaded. Trying to reload, and it is going to the google.com, because I provided the URL inside the action, which is google.com server URL, and then I actually given all the name. So if you notice these input tags, there's the name attribute to all those input tags, and I gave it the username value as the name, and I gave it the pass value as the name. And you can notice after my base URL, it is appending the question mark like earlier, and after this question mark, it is using the field name equal to field value, whatever I written inside that particular field, and then again field name equal to field value, whatever I have written inside that particular field. Okay, so this is how you can use a particular form, and this is how you can use you can send data anywhere. And what is the role of this type submit button? So if I don't write submit here, if I write reset here, okay, so now what will be happened? Notice the name has been changed, the reset the name has been changed as the reset, but it is not the very critical part. You can also give whatever name you want by using value attribute. You can still give it the submit name, okay, and it is still, oh, I'm sorry, it was at wrong place. This is not the correct input tag. I was trying to change the name. It is the correct input tag. This is my button, and I want to change the name for it. Okay, let me save it. Okay, so here there's the button name, which is still submit, but the type is reset. So what it will do now, if I write anything here, okay, if I write any username or any password, and if I hit the submit button, notice this URL is not going anywhere. It is still on the same page, but my data have been wiped out. So this type reset is used to reset a particular form. Okay, so if a particular user is submitting any data inside the form, and maybe he mentioned the wrong information, and we want to clear the form and resubmit, refill this again, so you can make this button to create the reset or clear or wipe form data feature. Okay, so this method is very important. You will use submit to submit a form, and you will use reset to reset a particular form. Okay, now there is the one more catch. This method, the submit method, actually submitting all the data to the particular URL. Okay, so let me just get rid of this for now, so that it don't take extra time to reload or submit the data. So let me reload this page, and if I hit anything here, and if I click on the submit, notice there is a question mark after the URL, and there is the field name and the field value. So is it a good way to submit a particular form? No. If this was my login form, if I logged into my account by using this particular form, then that means this is submitting data to the URL, and by submitting data to a particular URL, this data is being sent towards the backend server. But every URL which we visit actually saved inside the browser history. So what happened if a particular person will look out at our browser history, he will notice that the username and password is available in the plain text directly, and he can capture that data and he can misuse that. Okay, so it is the security flaw. Well, this is the method which is known as get method of a particular form. So that means it is the by default method, and if you are using get method, your all the data will be appended to the URL and then it will send to the backend server. Okay, but if you want to make it secure, you can use post instead of get, and it will secure your data. It will submit the forms in the same way, but your data will not be go into the URL. So your URL will be as same as it was earlier. Okay, so let me again write here like https google.com, and if I write anything inside this particular form, if I write username and if I write password, okay, so what it will do, if I click on the submit button, it will reload the page and it will try to fetch the google.com URL. It will try to jump at that URL location, but it will not append anything by writing question mark here inside the field. Okay, so it is the options of a particular form. This is how you can create a particular form, and this is how you can use a particular form. Well, there's the security features like post and get method. You have to be very precise for that. Inside which scenario you are working, you have to give the security considerations first. Okay, and then you can use that particular form. Okay, so this is how you can actually use a form tag, and this is how you can create a simple or advanced form. Okay, well, there is few extra features available in the form, and there is few extra attribute of the input tag, and extra tag inside a form is available that you can actually use if you want. Well, think about this particular scenario, that if you want to create this form as a login form. Okay, you have decided that this form will be my actually login form, and actually I will host this on my website. Okay, well, actually this form will work. There is no issue, there is no problem with this with the functionality of this particular form, but you can notice that there is no option to tell the user that what he should write here in this field and what he should write here in this particular field. Okay, so he will have to guess only that here I have to write the password, username, and here I have to write the password. Okay, well, if you want to render a particular informal tag, if you want to create informal content, informal text that a user can read and do accordingly, so you have the label tag inside a particular form. Okay, so if you are using the content, you can write it inside the label tag. Okay, like it will create a field name and that name will be visible to the user. Okay, so now this is the username field, and here I want the users to write the username, so I can write in this particular label tag for the user hint that user name, or I can write your username or anything, whatever you want. Okay, so it will create a content, and the label tag is also the inline tag, so it will create the content in the same line in sync with the input tag. If you want to create a new line, you can use the br tag, and then for the password you can also create the label for the password like password, and user can understand well that this is the password field. Okay, so this is how actually you can format your form, and this is how you can create a more attractive or more advanced form in the sense. But again, if you are not comfortable with this label tag, and if you are not comfortable with this syntax, then you can use one extra feature or one extra attribute of the input tag, which is placeholder attribute. So I can provide placeholder to the input tag, and inside that placeholder attribute I can write anything, whatever I want to write, and I want to show the user, I can write here. Okay, so I can write enter your username, let's say, and if I am writing it, and if a user will open this form, he will see a opaque content inside a input field. Okay, and once he click inside that particular input field, and once he started typing, this placeholder value will be removed by the browser, or will be removed by this input tag automatically. Okay, so this is the good feature of input tag. You can use it, and if there is no content inside that particular input field, your placeholder value will be shown, so that a user can get help. And if there is a particular value, if a user type anything, then it will not be visible to this particular inside this particular input tag. Okay, so it is the formatting feature of a particular form. There is also few conditional feature available, like for now, let's say that, let me change this to get, and if I fill the data in this particular form, and let's say hello and password 123, and if I submit, this form is actually submitting this data. Okay, and if I do not write the password, or if I do not write the username, if I empty both of the field, or if I left empty any one of them, still this form will go and it will submit with the no password value. Here the password is empty. Okay, so this is the critical scenario. In this case, actually this is not a good way. This will increase the server responsibility, but you are not giving the front end conditional, you are not doing the front end validation part. So if you want that this data, this form should not be submitted if the password field is empty, so you can go inside the password input field. Okay, and you can pass the required attribute. You do not have to pass any value here, you just write required and you will left it as it is. And now if you left this as the, if you mark this as the required, so user cannot submit the form without writing anything in it. Okay, so if I try to submit this particular form, it will raise a exception error that will warn you that this field is necessary, and it will give you the message that please fill out this field. Okay, so it is indicating you that you cannot left it empty. Okay, so this is the method you can pass, and you can pass this required attribute to any of the input tag or all of the input tag inside a particular form. You can pass it inside the date field type, or you can pass it inside the actually checkbox type. So if I use a particular checkbox, like for example, if this is the declaration box of, and a user should declare before submitted, so I can create a checkbox and I can pass the required attribute to that. And if I write password and if I write username, but if I do not check this particular field and try to submit, it is not gonna submit. Again, it will raise an exception error and it will say that you should check this particular field to submit this particular form. And if I validate everything, like if I check this as well, now I can submit this particular form, okay, with all the data. So this is the kind of validation and you can perform on your front end side. The rest of the validation will be used by the backend servers, will be used by the backend developer, and the students who are enrolled in the full stack development, they will also learn the backend part. But rest of you will have the opportunity to learn it, the front end side. Okay, so this is how you can make the front end validations, and this is how your form works. After this form concept, actually we have few extra tag inside the HTML we can use, like the container tag. Okay, so you will not get a very idea at this point. You will get the idea when we will start CSS, like styling part, because there the container is very important. But if anyone is talking about the container, if you want a container in which you can put all of your content, you can use div tag as a container. Okay, so it is also block tag, so it is not in line, and it is also non self closing, you have to close it. and inside this particular tag you can put whatever content you want. So if you want to do the section wise coding, which is very important, which is you have to do once you will start the CSS, because the section give us the functionality to choose a particular content on some condition basis, and another section we can choose that another section on some other condition basis. Okay, so the section wise content is required, so we will use to create the we will use to write div tag to create the section. This tag has no functionality by default. If you write the div tag and if you reload your page, there is nothing on the page because div is not going to create anything by default. But we can use the CSS and we can give the style. We can give this particular division a shape. Like if, for demo purpose, we are not looking for this div tag right now, but we can give it a try to explain it clearly, that if I have this div tag, then I can create shapes or anything we want. Okay, so this is just for the demo purpose. Notice by using this particular div tag, I created this section here, I created this box icon or box model here. Okay, or even I can create circle by providing it border radius. So this is the advanced CSS concept, and we will learn it when we start the CSS. But to start the CSS, you actually have to be familiar with this particular content, which is div tag. It is the section tag. So you have a div tag to create a section, you have the nav tag to create the section, but you will use nav tag only if you are creating the navigation bar of your website. So this is for the SEO purpose, you have to use that. Okay, and then we have a script tag to write a JavaScript code in your HTML file. Okay, so if you want to create a JavaScript code, if you want to write a JavaScript code inside your HTML file, you have to create this script tag, and inside between this script tag you can write any JavaScript code, like where a equal to 0 or anything we want. Okay, after that, even if you don't want to write it here, if you want to link a JavaScript particular file, which is separate file, still you have to create this script tag, and you have to pass the src attribute, and inside that src you will pass the file name like test.js or whatever your file name and location is. Okay, after this, at the last, we have the link tag. So in this previous example, I shown that we can write CSS in the style tag. Okay, I used style tag to write styles. So this is the style tag. You can write the CSS between this, and this tag should be inside the head section of your HTML structure. Okay, if you don't want to write the style or CSS code inside the HTML file, you can create another CSS file separately, and by creating the link tag, you can provide that CSS file URL inside this href attribute, like styles.css or whatever whatever CSS file location is. Okay, so it was all about the HTML, and I hope you find it very interesting, and it will help you for sure. Okay, so next we will move towards the CSS. It is all about the HTML. Thank you for watching.